Hey, this is Nicky G and welcome to Better Commander. Elves, man, 'tis the season, and the elves have broken free from Santa's secret shop and are here to wreak havoc. Elves have always been one of my least favorite tribes, just on principle. They just seem a little dodgy, they're out there in the forest, they come out just to stab you with their knives and arrows, which is really felonious behavior if you think about it. Just look at Finhorn elves out there. I mean, this art is oddly terrifying, because these guys are so cute, but they're showing you their shanks, you know what I mean? They're literally going to drink your blood. So in this video, we're going to look at what elves are good at. We're going to explore the elf ball archetype and commander, and we're going to look at some commanders you can use to give your friends at the table little elf balls for Christmas. But before we get lost in the woods, let's sneak through the foliage a little bit silently on our little elf vest, our little elf hat, and we're going to hit the like and subscribe buttons, okay? I don't do Patreon, I don't have sponsors, so that's the support I need, dude. Just those little clicky wickies. And if you're feeling super spicy, feel free to super thanks me some loot and I'll shout you out next video. The Elf Ball archetype is traditionally a deck that uses fast mana, mana dorks, and untappers to produce a huge amount of mana and channel that mana into a game-winning spell or two. The principles are the same for EDH, though we are restricted by the rules of the format, but we have access to far more cards. Elves have enough of a few effects that we can consistently adhere to this strategy, even with the inherent inconsistency of a 100 card singleton format. Alright, mana ramp. Well, we asked the question up top, what are elves good at? Dude, elves can do this thing where they reach inside their tiny elven souls and they pull out incredible amounts of mana. The efficiency is really remarkable. You got cards like Finhorn elves, you got Llanowar elves, Boreal druid. These are all 1 mana and can catapult us to 3 mana on turn 2. These are all elves as well, and as we'll see later, that's going to be quite relevant. You got cards like this beautiful Priest of Titania, 1 and a green for a creature elf druid, it's a 1/1. Tap, add green for each elf on the battlefield. This is one of my all-time favorite cards. It's so simple, it's so cute, the art is beautiful, so powerful in an elf deck. Then we got Heritage Druid, 1 green mana for a creature elf druid, it's a 1/1. Tap 3 untapped elves you control, add green, green, green. If you're making tokens, you have a Reclamation Sage just kind of chilling out there, tap him and make some mana, brother. Alright, well shoot, we got ourselves up to 3 mana on turn 2. Well, there's a bunch of super playable mana dorks that we can play at 3 mana. We got Circle of Dreams Druid. Look at this beautiful card. Green, green, green for an elf druid. 2/1. Tap, add green for each creature you control. Oh my god, it's like Gaia's Cradle, but it's kind of crappy. The realms protected the druid of the Circle of Dreams and the fruitful places and all this stuff. He's got some flavor text there too. This is where the rubber hits the road, dude. Once you get to 3 mana, you're kind of rolling downhill in an elf ball deck due to cards that are producing at least 3 mana. Yeah, and if you don't have Captain Cradle up there, you have a critical mass of cards that do a reasonable impression. You got Finhorn Elder. Look at this guy, Green Weaver Druid. Finhorn Elder looks like he's at an elf party listening to some guy's story about how he almost made $1 billion in crypto. This is like, interesting. Well, I've got to go make 2 mana now. Green Weaver Druid is just shooting mana goo out of his hand. Look at this beautiful boy. Llanowar Tribe, dude. Look at this guy. He's just a boss hanging out in the woods with his 2 lady friends. What are they getting up to up there? If you're his buddy, you get 3 green mana. If you're not, you're getting stabbed 3 times. Oh man, then you got Rishkar Pima Renegade. 2 and a green for a legendary creature, elf druid. It's a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Each creature you control with a counter on it has tap, add green. This is a super efficient card. It doesn't care what kind of counter either, I just noticed that. And it's 25 cents. Plus it enters and makes some other thing into a mana dork or a slightly bigger mana dork if it's already a mana dork. Alright, then you got the big mama, Marwyn the Nurturer. 2 and a green for a legendary creature, elf druid, it's a 1/1. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn the Nurturer. Tap, add an amount of green equal to Marwyn's power. I mean, this art really nails the Nurturer namesake. And how the heck are you going to fire that bow when you got a baby elf you're holding? You got to hold the head, dude. Baby's head's going to roll off. Unless, listen, you can train that baby to hold a knife. You can attach an arrowhead to the baby and just yeet that thing into your enemy. I told you, the elves were felonious, dude, but this is the definition of elf ball. And as we'll see later, there are a lot of ways to pump our elves. And you can untap them for big bursts of mana with Seeker of Skybreak. 1 and a green for a creature elf, it's a 2/1. Has tap, untap target creature. She's just looking around, she's seeking stuff. Untap your 3 mana tappy creatures and make 6 damn mana. And while we're on the subject of untappers, you got Wirewood Lodge, it's a land. Tap, add colorless, or green and tap, untap target elf. Yeah man, you can untap your buddy's elf if you want to, or, hear me out here, you can untap your own elf that taps for 1 billion mana. Alright, also in the 3 mana slot, which is where we want to top out most of the time, there are a bunch of mana dorks that can get us some type of card advantage. So we got Llanowar Visionary, 2 and a green for a creature elf druid, it's a 2/2. When Llanowar Visionary enters the battlefield, draw a card, has tap, add green. I'm really high on this card. It's got a decent body, it replaces itself, it ramps us, and it's an elf. I have this guy in a few decks. It also has crossover utility in clone and blink decks. Drawing cards is good, ramp is good. It's a good card. And you got your Elvish Harbinger, 2 and a green for a creature elf druid, it's a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for an elf card, reveal it, then shuffle and put it on top. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. This is kind of a dubious card advantage. It's not really card advantage as such, but it's card quality advantage. It can get you what you need in a pinch. Don't forget, elves have some of the best utility creatures in MTG, Reclamation Sage and stuff like that. Oh, then we got the Tactician, Canopy Tactician, 3 and a green for a creature elf warrior. Other elves you control get +1/+1. It's a 3/3. Has tap, add green, green, green. I mean, it's got some kind of other stuff. Death and life are 2 ends of the same spear. So that's a lot to do with one spear. You know what I mean? You're doing life, you're doing death. Imagine getting stabbed by an elf and looking down at the blood splurting out of your chest and seeing some pink flowers. I mean, that's a confusing message. Then we got Elvish Archdruid, 1 green green for a creature elf druid, it's a 2/2. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1, has tap, add green for each elf you control. He knows the name of every elf born in the last 4 centuries, and more importantly, they all know his. It's the power of old people, dude. This guy, he's levitating leaves, and he's going to show you the mysteries of Roots Brother. He's going to show you the business end of some kind of leaf blade. And this leads us very nicely into our lords. That's another thing elves are good at. They have about 8 lords or so that give elves a little pump. And when there are 40 or so creatures in your deck, a little pump goes a long way. First, we got Imperious Perfect, 2 and a green for a creature elf warrior, it's a 2/2. Other elves you control get +1/+1. Has green and tap, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Oh my god, dude, she's more beautiful than Chris Helmsworth, I guess. Plus, you can make some more elves, which is another thing elves are good at, but we can look at that later. What do you want, some kind of Elvish champion? It's 1 green green for a creature elf, it's a 2/2. Other elf creatures get +1/+1 and have Forest Walk, dude. This is like a $15 card. I have the 8th edition art, which is what I'm going to put on the screen here. And this is the pinnacle of Magic the Gathering art. This is the best one because this dude is beefy, dude. He's eating Elvish growth hormone and he's firing arrows straight into the sun. You got Jaraga Warcaller, 1 green mana for a creature elf warrior, it's a 1/1. Has multi-kicker for 1 and a green. Enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Jaraga Warcaller. What the heck are we doing? We're making lots of mana, dude. We're going to pump up our buddy here, Joe Raga, our old pal Giuseppe Raga. He's going to make meatballs out of you with his elf power. Straight out of Dominaria United, you got Leaf Crowned Visionary, 3 green for a creature elf druid, it's a 1/1. Other elves you control get +1/+1. What could be simpler than that? Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may pay green. If you do, draw a card. Oh, this is a different style of elf, where she's all just adorned with flower petals and nettles and some kind of crazy stuff. This card is fantastic. It's card advantage and lord status. Speaking of card advantage, this guy goes in any creature-based deck and is also an elf. You got Beast Whisperer, 2 green green for a creature elf druid, it's a 2/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Draw a card, buddy. He's whispering. So another thing elves are pretty good at, and have this in common with rabbits, is they're good at making other elves. In this case, it's tokens. You got Lissalana Huntsmaster, 2 green green for a creature elf warrior, it's a 3/3. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Buddy, what are you doing with them stripy dogs over there? And we got Wolverine Riders. If I try to ride Wolverine, I probably get charges, dude. 4 green green for a creature elf warrior, it's a 4/4. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness. And there's a bunch of elf cards that make non-elf tokens as well, like Wirewood Hive Master, 1 and a green for a creature elf, it's a 1/1. Whenever another non-token elf enters the battlefield, you may create a 1/1 green insect creature token. There are a couple really good, fantastic token commanders, and this guy used to be way more expensive prior to a reprint in the first Double Masters, and that's Risk the Redeemed. Hybrid green-white for a legendary creature elf warrior, it's a 1/1. Has 2 and a hybrid, tap, create a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token, and then it has 4 and 2 hybrids, tap, for each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. This guy does not care what type of token you make, but you can definitely build in the elves for all the lords and bonuses. Plus you get access to white's removal options. And you got Lathril, Blade of the Elves, 2 black and green for a legendary creature elf noble. It's a 2/3 with menace. Whenever Lathril, Blade of the Elves deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. Tap 10 untapped elves you control. Each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. This is a sneaky good Golgari commander that really leans into elf tokens. If you build the pumpable Lord Heavy commander decks, this can be a real threat. This opens up black, which has a bit of a different flavor for elves, but you get access to cool cards like Nadir's Nightblade and Underrealm Lich. Alright, so we're making tons of mana, but what are we going to do with it? We're drawing cards, we have a wide board, so how do we win? What are we going to do with all this? Well, there are some mana sinks we can pump up to win. We got our Allosaurus Shepherd. This guy, 1 green mana for a creature elf shaman, it's a 1/1, can't be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered. Has 4 green. Until end of turn, each elf creature you control has base power and toughness 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other creature types. So they're going to be elf dinosaurs, dude. I guess they're running on top of the elves, or the dinosaurs are riding the elves or whatever. This guy, until the reprint, was so expensive you had to trade a Bugatti just to get one. It's down to $20 right now. Plus you can get a full art that kind of resembles a sour Val Kilmer just doing a Dino Dana in the woods. Oh man, then you got Elvish Warmaster, 1 and a green for a creature elf warrior to 2/2. Whenever 1 or more other elves enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Boo. Has 5 green. Elves you control get +2/+2 and gain Death Touch until end of turn. Look, this is what happens when you anger Santa Claus, alright? He takes off the red hat and the red coat and he reveals he was an elf all along, just exploiting his family members for their labor. Then he grabs a sword and he's gonna slice you up, dude. And then you got the big daddy of Elvish big mana win conditions, Ezuri, Renegade Leader, 1 green for a legendary creature elf warrior to 2/2. Has green, regenerate another target elf. Has 2 green. Elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and green trample until end of turn. This is a great hero, he's a grand betrayer, who really cares? The truth of his legacy is clouded by the fog of legend. This is a fantastic commander, and he helms my own Elf Ball EDH variant deck. You have access to massive mana. You can activate his ability 3-4 times to give your board a massive pump and then just bang in for a whole forest full of damage, dude. Personally, I use cards like Nykthos, Shrine of Nyx, and Nyxbloom Ancient to make so much mana I need to use my fingers, everybody else's fingers, to figure out how much exactly. You need a dang abacus with these 2 things out on the battlefield. You can check out my deck, I'm going to put the link in the description. Alright, so there are 81 legal commanders that are also elves, so you can get pretty creative with it if you want to. I have a Belby deck as well, but that has nothing to do with elves. You have Dwynen, Guiltleaf Dane, 2 green for a legendary creature elf warrior to 3/4 with reach. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever Dwynen, Guiltleaf Dane attacks, you may gain 1 life for each attacking elf you control. This is a lord in the command zone, you can lean into life gain strategies, plus she goes great in the 99. Oh, I love this thing. Abomination of Llanowar. 1 black and green for a legendary creature elf horror. It's a star with vigilance and menace. Abomination of Llanowar's power and toughness are each equal to the number of elves you control, plus the number of elf cards in your graveyard. This card is so cool. I love the flavor of a horror just scooping up monstrosities, adding them to its body. Kind of like the Kardashians, if you think about it. This card needs trample though, but this can be a really fun build around. And you got Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, 2 and a green for a legendary creature, human elf druid, it's a 2/3. Tokens you control have tap, add green. Choose a background. Interesting elf background commander. This lady wants to lean in tokens and big mana. And you got Ginny Faye, Jetmir II. A hybrid red and green, then a hybrid green and white for a legendary creature elf druid, it's a 3/3. If you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. Hey man, listen, she's an elf, brother. You can do some pretty cool things with this. Instead of boring 1/1 elves, you can make cool cats and Snoop Dogs. And you got old Nath over here riding a llama. 3 black and green for a legendary creature elf warrior, it's a 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Listen man, I'm just including this guy for completeness sake, but everybody hates discard. Don't build this animal. It's terrible. There are so many elf commanders, I'm not going to go over all of them, but suffice it to say that elves are super fun. You can do some really busted stuff. Just remember, you're vulnerable to board wipes, so you want to keep your hands full so you can at least rebuild. Anyways, guys, listen, be kind to each other. Make lots of elves in the woods if that's your jam, okay? Get out there with your knives, start stabbing up the people in the woods, and get out there in the forest if you can. Get out in nature, because that's good for you. Sneaky G from Better Commander, signing off.